Meeting to order because we do have a quorum of 5 out of 8, so the attendees, members present, Bob Hatch, Steph Friend, Mark Kresge, Todd, and Tim. And so with that, let's see, so you can get the time that we started, that goes in there. And Rick and Susan are both missing. Rick's out visiting a daughter. Does Susan go with him, or does she get another commitment?
She's picking him up at the airport.
Oh, it's coming back from visiting. Rick sent around the minutes. Has anybody got any corrections or omissions to the minutes?
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Yeah, I didn't see any issues with those that came around. Treasurer's report, I got an email from Susan that the financial secretary, I forget who Susan referenced, but did not receive any hay money or any additional funds, but most notably hay money. And so she assumes that the Treasurer's report is identical to what it was last month, which was Ryder property, 412532, Hubbardson Preservation Trust Act, 1305690, and open space expense, 34834. The old business. Anything on the Hubbardson hikers, Tim?
No.
All right, and probably won't have any updates on Destiny's Garden. That's usually Rick presenting information on that. Nobody else knows anything on that, right? No. Land Preservation Subcommittee. Actually, we didn't do anything this past month. I got tied up with a tractor, which is now running. That's a big thing. Yeah. And then we had, well, digress for a second here. We had a interesting thing. We've been chasing a electric fence problem. It's just not good if you got a bunch of horses contained by electric fence. Turned out to be a lightning strike. We had one charger inside the barn, and Steph went over into the corner of the barn where that was mounted. It was inside. And there were parts all over the floor.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, blown right
And then,
from the wall, and
so-
still hang the cord hanging with some kind of still attached.
And so I ended up buying a better charger, but then I had a bunch of issues with it. It didn't seem to be working, whatnot. But what we found out is correlating to the electric strike. The wires, it's rope wiring with a bunch of strands, stainless steel and copper strands inside, about a 1/4 inch thick. And they got zapped enough, so there were a bunch of open circuits. And so we finally found out, chased that down, and then we were going up and down the fence line to see where it was, and the fence splits at one point. And so, yeah, there you go. One direction we found that the fence was okay, then we walked up the other direction, and then we saw that it was charred and get more charred, and one spot it was just completely melted. So
Melted right apart.
that's what that
Right
was.
where it struck.
So now the fence is all set and running. But back to that trail, Land Priority group. We'll get back on track on that this month when I get going on that. And we have, relative to you, Mike, where we're gonna pick up is we wanna capture the information that you and who's the biker? How about him? Christopher, that you and Christopher presented at that gathering that we had. And so Mark did some things with the plan so that we can use that, and we're gonna come up with a way for the kinds of information that we want you to highlight on that, whether you do a PDF and mark it on there or something, but we'll come up with the criteria that we'd like to capture. Like for example, you could have something that's a great trail, but it's got an issue in one particular area, kinda like Canesto Brook right now, that, that's a reparable situation, and then you're gonna have a good trail back there again. Or you could have a trail that just has a lot of problems, and so that's important to us relative to the amount of work and the value of that trail to, as we evaluate those, so. The open space plan, any activity on that?
No, but Rick sent around a document
Yeah,
on it,
the list of
Yes.
potential goals.
Yep.
you know. So I don't know if we wanna talk about that at all tonight, or make this a major push at the November meeting.
Okay, we may talk about it a little bit, we'll get to that, and so I think we might do that. So that's a major thing that's gonna be part of the plan, because you need the goals section in there.
Oh, yeah.
The Beaver Pond, we'll get to that, now that the tractor's going, and it's gonna be basically the same approach that we talked about. I revisited it and just reconfirmed that 40 feet is gonna put you well past that spot. It's probably, maybe only 25 feet to where they've got a dam that blocks things up. So the outflow, because we just have to make sure we anchor it well so it doesn't end up going downstream. Now, ARPA was on the last meeting, and so there's some new news on that. Do you wanna talk about that, or should we wait for Rick and Susan to be part of that?
No, I'd like to talk about it tonight.
Okay,
And then probably, and we've tentatively talking about it with Nate next week.
yes. Okay.
So the communication that we got, that Bob got a couple weeks ago,
Yep.
10 days ago,
Yep, week and a half.
Whatever.
Yep.
Was from Nate basically saying, you guys didn't spend that yet, right?
Yeah. We wanna sit down and talk about it?
The town has an unexpected bill for putting conduit under the new sidewalks downtown for a future lighting system, so we can have a really good view of this shared use concrete expanse that will never be used for anything shared.
Oh, Seth and I were just talking about that coming in. Are they gonna plan on doing something like some vintage post lamps or something?
That was kind of the thinking that we,
Because they have one thing that's
That they
just got a
say-
firebox or something else on it that's a vintage type structure. There's one post like that, and I was saying, at first I looked at it and said, that'd make a nice lamp post, but there's
Yeah.
no lamp on it.
So anyway, for some reason, this expense on the conduit was unexpected, 25 grand. And what Nate has recommended to the select board and what they're pretty much buying off on is that the 16K that was gonna come this way is gonna instead go into conduit.
Yeah.
But he volunteered to talk more about it. And, I don't think anything's gonna change. I mean, I watched the select board meeting where this was discussed. And they were pretty much set on it, as long as we hadn't actually committed the money
Yeah.
to anything yet, which we haven't. It's a totally discretionary function of the select board. I mean, we don't have any cards to play here in
Yeah.
terms of playing hardball.
Yeah.
They're free to make that decision. The most we can do is make them feel a little bit guilty.
There was a first
Which-
volley on that.
But I'm interested in seeing what people think about that, in a specific context. We've talked before about sort of getting the wheels rolling on trying to sell a couple parcels to DCR next to Natty Brook and next to the Ware River. And there are some wheels starting to roll on that. Tim's gonna be the new point of contact with DCR since I have a conflict of interest on it now. But the conversation that hasn't taken place yet is, if this deal goes through, where do the proceeds go? Who gets the money? I think this would be an opportune time to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Sort of like a swap.
Yeah, sort of like a little quid pro quo with it. If we're gonna, I mean, there's a couple reasons. I mean, what I always had in mind was that some portion of the money would go into the open space account, and, you know, didn't know what that proportion was gonna be. But given the current situation, I think we should
Yes.
lobby for the
Yeah.
entire proceeds to go into open space.
That'd be great.
And I mean, it's kind of a long-term deal. The deal will be structured in two pieces. You know, there's a little $5,000 piece that we can complete next year. But then the bigger piece of it over by the Ware River is probably 2 years out at this point. But that would be like $25,000. You know, in terms of making an argument to them, I think there's a couple reasons why I think it makes sense for the money to be allocated this way. One is that it's just you know, it's basically, if we're gonna give up the town's interest in these parcels, which are currently, I mean, the benefit the town is currently getting out of them is a little bit of passive recreation for a rather select user group that consists mostly of Mike and me. And maybe an odd hunter or two here or there.
Lot of hunters out there.
So if we're giving up that interest, I mean, all those uses would still be allowed under the
Yeah.
DCR anyway. But at any rate, if we're giving up the fiscal interest in the property, it makes sense for that money to go into replicating that function, I think,
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Why would
So-
DCR want to buy it?
Just because it's contiguous with their Ware River holdings.
Surrounded by it, right?
We've already had that discussion. They are interested.
Okay.
Some of it's pretty close to water,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of it's what?
pretty close to water,
Oh,
like the
Yeah, no,
Natty Natty Brook.
They've taken it to their advisory committee and done the preliminary steps that are necessary to know whether they're interested or not. So there's that. It's kind of an even. So
Relatively even split.
it expands, potentially expands the town's recreational opportunities, because we would be putting the money into some area that's more easily accessible.
yeah, and there
Would be a water.
most likely to go back towards our accessible trail focus,
Or-
which is a really big plus for the town.
Right.
And on top of that, just relative to the initial, I think our funding from ARPA went from a moderately high number down to 16K or something, and so to maybe ask for roughly 30K is right in line. Besides, it's a sorely needed thing, and it'd be great for the town.
Yeah. I mean, the other issue is that, you know, if we're gonna, you know, nobody even knew that these parcels existed until I took an interest.
Mhm.
And if we're gonna put the effort into driving this process, because it's not enough money for Nate to get interested.
Yeah.
I mean, he's interested, but he can't put a
Yeah.
lot of effort into 25 grand. He's got bigger fish to
Yeah.
fry.
Yeah,
So if we're gonna be putting this effort into it, I think it's a matter of
So, yeah,
fairness,
then if we-
fairness
if
that
we
would
pushed
go
it,
towards
so-
our interest.
yeah, yeah.
And I would think, you know, in terms of the select board, I would think that at least Katie and Heather Monroe would probably feel a little guilty about yanking back the ARPA funds.
Yep.
Well, while we're making them feel guilty, could we get them to commit some labor and materials from DPW for some of the things we had in mind for these trails?
Yeah, I mean, DPW, they've been shorthanded for a long time at this point. I don't know, do you know if they're staffed up yet?
I don't think so.
I just talked to Rich, Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road. Talked to Rich, cause Travis is on, leave, on vacation. And he said they were staffed up and then the guy, after 3 weeks, quit. So, they were okay and now they're down.
But Todd also mentioned materials, you might be able to get some material with them, if we want some material with that. They gotta pay for that, so.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's money.
Yeah.
And they don't have any extra in their budget either.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I mean, we can,
Presumably,
although they might.
they've got a wood chipper, right? I would think that they could provide us with some chipped wood for trail
yeah,
improvement.
or chip up stuff that we cut down.
Yeah,
Whatever.
Or stuff that they cut down. They haven't cleaned up the stuff they cut down months ago.
So anyway, what I was thinking of was meeting with Nate next week.
Yeah,
and
so
having this conversation, and then, you know, if we get him on board, then taking it to the select board sooner rather than later, while this memory is
Yes.
in their mind. We were tentatively looking at Monday, but do you wanna pick a different day? Given that you've got stuff going on Monday.
Just look at his calendar.
Well, the
I figured
the
it was
only,
like
the only
that.
potential fly-in, you know, and Steph's got a little eye surgery out in the morning. So, you know, there's a risk that I couldn't be there. I would like to be at that meeting, so.
I think you should be.
But, I mean, the surgery's right in Leominster, so it's a good chance that I'll be done in time. Steph
Yeah,
says no.
but I mean, why complicate
Yeah.
your life?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Because you said it for 2 o'clock, right?
Steph says, what are you talking about? Yeah, we could probably opt for another day that week.
I can't.
Want me to send out a note tomorrow?
Yeah, I can't remember why now, but I'm thinking that I wasn't available on Thursday, but other than that, I mean, Tuesday would be fine, Wednesday would be fine,
Okay.
and I think Tim should be there since he's the new victim on this coordination stuff.
All right, I'll make an action to reschedule that meeting. How's Wednesday? Is Wednesday good for you?
Yeah,
Wednesday's good for you? All right, I'll ask for Wednesday. That's the best day for me. Anything Wednesday either.
yeah, 4 to 5 PM seems like a good time to catch Nate.
Is
As long as he doesn't have other plans that evening.
Well, yeah.
it like 4 to 5? Or,
I've noticed that other meetings with him, those are the times he's looked for.
okay, but you're basically available.
I'm available.
Okay, so I'll just get in contact with Nate
Yeah.
and figure out a time.
Yep. This may be way too complicated, and goes in a completely different direction from the ARPA funds, but is it possible that DCR already owns a piece of property that the town would like to swap for these other parcels?
That would be virtually impossible. I mean, for them to, it would be an Article 97 issue. It would take a 2/3 vote of the legislature.
Yeah.
Oh, 'cause it's state property.
Because of the way it was bought. and
That was
everything.
acquired for conservation purposes, and to do
Swap
anything
it out,
with
yeah.
it, you gotta go through the Article 97 process, which is
Yeah.
Good thing.
possible, but not very.
I noticed they did it about 10 years ago on Route 68
Yep.
somewhere. I don't know what the issue was, I just happened to stumble on it. But I think where I stumbled on it was a bill in the legislature. So, yeah, that would be complicated. And, you know, the town getting ownership of the swimming area at Comet Pond is a pretty long shot anyway for a few acres back in the woods.
Yeah, but,
Yeah. Then you could swim with your thing.
Yeah, well. I mean, it would still, the logistics would be horrific.
Yeah.
But if you ask the operational people that are responsible for that beach whether they would like that idea, yeah, they would love it. They have a real problem
Oh,
staffing
really?
that. It's just a pain in their ass,
Oh,
basically.
huh.
All right, so I'll get that rescheduled and have that ARPA and DCR land, or open land sold to DCR. We'll have that discussion on Wednesday instead of Monday. That's it for old business for what I had. Anybody else got anything on old business?
Yeah.
Mike.
Mike does.
Mike?
Mr. Chair, just to go back to that
Right.
issue is, do you remember what the ARPA project was? And I know you mentioned that you thought it was a significantly higher number. I attended many of those ARPA meetings, and I don't recall the open space project amount, what the project was for, because we had to identify something and you had to apply for it, or what the amount was.
Okay, relative to the amount, I don't recall that off the top of my head, but what we did do, we put a pretty significant effort into, with some reasonable detail into it, about planning an accessible trail up at Malone Road. Most of the
Okay.
open land in town is not very flat.
Right.
But that whole upper table,
Mhm.
starting at the parking lot, and then it just probably east and then south or something like that, down through the woods, and then Mark did a little bit of work, and then the trail heads out towards Dotty Rock, or
Right.
in that direction.
Right.
But that gets pretty aggressive
There's a couple of hills.
for an accessible trail.
Right.
Because with limitations on slope and surface and all those things. But Mark found a beautiful, just prior to the intersection of the Dotty Rock Trail, and where that trail loops around back to the field, just
Mhm.
prior to that, there's an easy stretch. It was relatively flat, not a lot of roots and rocks and stuff like that, not much tree stuff to do, that would take you
So-
right back
so-
over to the field.
Okay,
So
so it
the-
was an
the project
accessible
was-
trail.
the-
Now
yeah.
I'm starting to recall that.
Yep, and
Yeah,
then,
we went through a couple iterations.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the dollar figure was that we finally arrived at, but it was somewhere between 60 grand and 100 grand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Somewhere in
okay.
that.
So they
Because at that point-
significantly
at that point in time-
reduced, they significantly reduced the amount
Yeah.
requested.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, on to new business, and relative to Mark's initial comments relative to how much you want to get into this, we can at least go over this. So Rick sent around, I don't know how many people have looked at it, a summary of what came out of the survey stuff that Rick and Tim worked on. And I'll just glance through these. Pursue opportunities to conserve more land for passive recreation, natural resource protection, and scenic value through the purchase of, or by partnering with land trusts and qualified organizations to secure conservation restrictions. So essentially, that is a follow-up to the stuff that we've been talking about. Find open parcels and then pursue the acquisition of those if they have value, and that's what the essence of our scoring system is. To continue to preserve and maintain existing open space to protect water quality, wildlife, and agricultural resources. Third bullet, identify potential threats to major south-flowing streams, hence things
Major
that
what-
can get
what
into the
flowing?
Ware River, what?
Major what flowing streams?
South. Canesto, Burnshirt River, Natty Brook, obviously the headwaters of East and West Ware River. So again, the, identify if there are any potential.
I guess we do have a couple brooks that don't flow in that direction, but most.
What's that?
Templeton Brook and Hubbardston Brook go in a different direction, but
Every other
otherwise,
line.
everything's
Everything
south
flows
flowing.
south. Yeah. Yeah, Hubbardston Brook is what feeds the north into Gardner, right? Yeah. So anyway, it was to identify if there were any threats associated with those, associated with properties that might want to be acquired. So that was the essence of that, to protect those waters. And this, these again, these aren't Rick's ideas, this is what came out of the survey. And inputs from people that filled out the survey. Preserve agricultural land, increase public awareness of the issue of invasive species and the threats they impose. Pursue interconnectivity of town and regional trails, achieve protection of open space resources through available means such as creating mixed-use zoning, requiring developers to dedicate a portion of acreage to open space, etc. Pursue increased state relationships, including with our representatives, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, DCR, and the Director of Rural Affairs, to actively lobby for increased funding, increase public awareness of the benefits of open space and activity, and actively promote the town's recreation areas, conservation areas and trails, encourage more public involvement by offering activities involving the outdoors, hikes, educational walks, etc., aka the Hubbardston hiker thing that Tim's sort of heading up. Promote our recreation opportunities in conservation areas, trails regionally to encourage ecotourism. Develop a marketing plan to highlight the economic opportunities that town's open space and recreation resources provide to potential businesses. And a minor thing, but right along those lines, we just had an equestrian ride with Bay State Trail Riders up at Mount Jeff, but what we've done, and I convinced Bay State Trail Riders, they usually gather at the end of it, and so we get all the food for that from Giacomo's, so it's just a small amount, but it's the idea of what, of doing this ecotourism, and if it's done enough, it's a moderate amount of money. Create a section of town website to highlight the suggested public information and promotional activities, provide signage leading to our recreation and conservation areas, trailheads, to assist residents and out-of-town visitors. Any comments on all that? I guess a challenge on this, and from the time that I worked on the open space ban 5 or 6 years ago, you need to have dates that you're gonna, this seems to be along the lines of a little bit of motherhood and apple pie and trying to get it into concrete terms. Motherhood and apple pie, you can't put dates on, and so if you're gonna do something, it needs to be something that you can kind of specifically wrap your arms around. So you could take these things and try and get more specific with each one of these as to what that would entail. And because I don't know the granularity of the time frame, but it was something like, this is what's gonna, it's a 7-year plan. So, you know, this is what we plan to do in the first 6 months, first year, first 2 years, this is a project, 3 years, et cetera. But you have to have, it has to be measurable, if it's gonna be of any value. Measurable / actionable. And that would be the hard part about taking this. So there's quite a bit of work to take this and turn it into an actionable plan. So I look at that. Any other comments?
Are we supposed to just pick a few of them, or are we supposed to?
Well,
Or highlight the top 10, or?
Whatever
I'm
we
not-
want.
I'm not sure what Rick was thinking of. I've looked at some other towns' open space recreation plans, and they have 5, maybe 6 goals. And several of these.
There's some of these redundancy in here.
Well, some of these could be the actionable objectives under a general goal, like
Mhm.
the first one could pursue opportunities to conserve more land. That could be the general, what did you say, motherhood and apple pie?
Yeah.
That could be that kind of goal, a broad goal. And then you've got continue to preserve and maintain existing open space, preserve agricultural land. Some of those might be reworded into something more specific with a time target on it. And there's, toward the bottom, you've got encourage more public involvement, or increase public awareness of the benefits of open space and recreation areas. And then there's encourage more public involvement, promote recreation opportunities, develop a marketing plan, create a section on town website, provide signage. Those could all be
Add a little bit more specific, so they're
Right.
getting to be more in the specific direction. You would want to be a little bit more specific than that, but you could take that and easily add
Yep.
specifics to it.
Right, so I'm thinking maybe from this list, and maybe with a few other ideas, come up with just 4 or 5 of the motherhood and apple pie goals. And then the others, try to
Fall
come up
under.
with something specific that could be done within the 7-year time frame.
Yeah, because that's actually part of it too. It want to be things that have an end date within that time frame, versus having something that gets started 6 years out but is going to take another 5 years to finish. That be something that would be pertinent.
I don't know that you need to confine yourself to that.
Finishing it
but-
within that time
yeah,
frame.
But,
But as long as you had certain milestones, if you had a plan, then for whatever reason, I don't know, that we talked about maybe not getting some of these funds for maybe 3 years. And so that would be a start point before you could even touch those to do maybe an accessible trip. But that would be an example of something that we could push out, but you could definitely start, and it would be maybe something that we could define, instead of getting halfway to it, you do it in phases.
Right.
And so that could be, and we talked about that relative to the accessible trail, because there are definitely smaller loops and a bigger loop, et cetera. And so I could easily envision that accessible trail would have 2, 3, or 4 phases. At least 2 would be easy, probably 3.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
something like that.
So you could have
So
several
the goal would be
milestones.
to define the overall plan, and then to accomplish within the plan phase 1 and phase 2, something like that. That's what came out of the survey. The people have any other ideas what they would like to see in the plan? I mean, I just made a few notes just after going through this and whatnot, and I didn't, it might have been something alluded to trail improvements or something, but I think a very reachable goal would be to work on some trail improvements in some areas. I mean, Gates Hill has got one really messy, wet area that wouldn't be that difficult to fix. I mean, not a huge project. And it might cost a little bit to go over the water and stuff like that, but not a tremendous amount of money and not a tremendous effort. But I mean, things like that, I mean, I have a penchant from liking nice trails, so that's a thing of interest to me, so. And then, I don't know, what's the potential for any new trails? Well, what does that mean, Bob? There's an informal, one that's a really nice thing, that's an informal passage that goes from behind the chimney back over to Gates Hill, that significantly shortens the loop. I mean, and to have loops that are more attainable for somebody that wants to start out at 5:30 at night when they get home from work or something, but they don't want to go on a 3-mile hike, and so it's much more desirable to go on a loop than an out and back. And where are we restrained from doing anything relative to a new trail?
In the WPR, which
Yeah.
you guys walked yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's exactly the spot where it can't.
So so
Talking about.
so there's no, with that conservation thing, there's no opportunity for a trail enhancement other than repairs?
You could, basically, no. I mean, you could certainly have that conversation with Felicia and get an opinion from her. But the way I read it, no, we can't build new trails at Mount Jeff.
Well, I think I've had some conversations with her, so I'll just let her.
Not Felicia, it's Danny.
Oh, yeah, she was just the monitor.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah.
would go back to, what's Danny's last name?
Almeida.
Yep. So she's the main Sierra monitor,
Yeah, she's this
or head of that portion of DCF?
WPR coordinator, I think is her.
Yeah, she said she focuses on land acquisition.
Felicia does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and what about, well, our own land, Malone Road, we know we can do something
We can do
there.
anything that we can
What about the
get
state
by
forest?
North County
What-
at Malone.
What about state forest?
There's a process, but I think I'm blanking on his name right now. But the park manager over at
Yeah, over in,
Dunn Pond
Yep.
is not opposed necessarily to
Okay.
that kind of idea. I mean, we could definitely have that conversation.
But anyway, things, I mean, that's just a couple ideas that I had, fixing up some of the trails. Tim talked about, Tim and I have been talking a little bit, may take behind the chimney and where it's all washed out and see what could be done to try and reclaim portions of that. And maybe that's probably a pretty big project, but maybe do that in a couple of phases or something. So why don't we take as in action, because we can continue this with Rick and Susan, because they'd be significant contributors to this,
Oh, yeah.
to come up with our own ideas relative to what we would, other goals that could go into the open space and recreation plan. Is that fair?
I'd like to see a little bit of emphasis on education, public education.
Some of which was touched in
It's-
the, yeah, but to expand on a couple of these things.
With regard to signage, I mean, we could do like tree identification,
Yeah,
Oh, well, that's a,
informative
that's
signs about various features.
That's a great project. I know from walking with Mr. Scientist over here, he can talk forever on the different trees, and, I mean, just one thing, when we took that walk with Felicia, he's looking up in that tree and picks up a leaf, he had to jump to get it, and on the back side of the leaf was some, you can explain what it was, but
was that the beech leaf disease?
Yeah, yeah.
No, the
Yeah,
nematode?
where you demonstrated your jumping ability.
and then there's that beech bark disease.
Yep, yep.
But this was, what was
Yeah,
this
they
in the?
didn't- They didn't need a new one. The beach park has been bad enough. but-
Mhm.
But you found, what was it on the
Yeah, we
backside
found
of
it
it?
on the big,
Was that the
huge
beach bark
leaf.
thing?
Oh, on the big.
No, that's on,
Yeah.
that's on the stem,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was on the backside of that leaf?
The beech, it was not on the backside, it's on the inside of the leaf. Is
Okay.
a nematode or nematode destroying the leaf tissue.
So, but at any rate, I can reflect on, when I lived in Bolton, they had one, little trail that had all these little signs. It was a relatively short trail or something, but, and so they had these little signs that were implanted in the ground, and, one of them was some sort of a spice tree, and, I mean, just, unique things like that, and so, yeah, that's a great thing. So we can, yeah, just expand on that, and specific things like that, where, we could do a trail, and maybe at Malone Road or anywhere. I mean, that's really cool information, nice information.
Something that's, I think has been done in a few other places is where they have these interpretive signs, each one down at the bottom says, this sign sponsored by,
Yep,
and it's either a family, I mean, some of them aren't commercial businesses, they're just some family sponsors it, but other ones, it might be a way to promote economic development if you, if businesses
to
in
pay for
town-
the signs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to help.
Yeah,
help
yeah,
pay for
because
the
that wouldn't
signs.
be a huge cost per sign. I mean, what was in Bolton was just maybe, something on a stake that it was a plaque about this
Mhm.
big or something. And so, I don't know, what that cost, $50 or something.
Yeah, yeah, you're not talking a big expense for this kind of project. It's more getting the, project management done.
Yeah, and
Getting it,
put
just
it-
getting it
putting-
done.
Yeah, right, getting the signs out there in a way that they'll stand up to.
Yeah. We can put some of Mike's, man-eating plants up.
Maybe do a land swap. Actually, I have an idea about that, but we can talk.
Okay, we'll get to that, and, so at any rate, so let's, take an action to come up with our own list of ideas like that, and like the stuff that I, come up with, and then that could be added to, and maybe restructuring, this. Maybe, Tim and I will take a shot, take a shot at restructuring this,
Yeah,
yeah. All right.
Yeah, I have a couple weeks of, a lot more availability between the 11th and Thanksgiving. So I'd like to contribute on that as well and see if we can have something reasonably put together for discussion at the end of November meeting.
Okay. All right, The, just a new business, trail clearing, associated with that ride, but, Steph and I and some helpers, got out and did quite a bit of work on Old Cross, Copper Mine, Link, Red Oak, and, Canesto Hill. Basically, we did, Old Cross top to bottom. We did, in fact, all of those. We did, the complete loop. We probably got a grand total of, over 50 hours if I add in the helpers. So we were out there with, a school group. There's somebody that comes to our barn. There's a teacher in Leominster, and so it's a sort of a, I don't think it's special needs, but it's a sort of a specially tuned to the type of students that are there. And so they get out quite a bit on outside activities. So they've come to our barn probably 5 or 10 times to do odds and ends. So one of the things we decided they could help with would be to do some work with them. So most of them weren't too productive, but we got some production out of some of them. And so we did some work on Old Cross and Red Oak with that school group twice. My brother came up and visited from Florida, so we grabbed him and took him out and did some more on Old Cross. In fact, we finished it up. And then we had a barn team with Steph and I and 4 other helpers, and they were a pretty productive group, so that's when we did, that was a long day. So we did Red Oak, Canesto Hill, Copper Mine, and Link. So, and there was quite a bit of growth on a lot of those.
I've been seeing the trimmings.
What's that?
Oh, you see them, see they haven't all been pulled off to the side? Is that what you mean?
Well, they barely made it to the side.
And, that was, some of the kids were good at that and some not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, take a stab at what the number of productive hours
Yep.
was and put it into the
Yep,
spreadsheet.
yep, I'll do that.
We told them we're only gonna be in the woods for a couple hours. And we get like 9-year-olds coming with us, and we were out there
Oh, wow.
for almost 7 hours, 5.
Wow.
Yeah, we were out from 11 to, Steph didn't get back in till 6.
They were hungry by the time.
I hope you had some sugar with you.
No.
No.
We had
Wow.
they had their lunches in the truck, and we're like, oh, you don't need to bring those, we'll be right back.
All right,
Well, go ahead.
the,
Jump in at the
I
end.
didn't have it on my, agenda, and I'll just, it's an anecdotal note, we had the meeting with, Felicia, and Tim, Steph, and I went on that walk with, Felicia Bacage, I think is how you pronounce her last name.
Buckeye.
What's that?
Buckeye.
Buckeye. Great walk, and so we walked down behind the chimney and then bushwhack at the intersection of behind the chimney and over to where the property line is, over to Gates Hill. And so there's a markage of, the trees are marked, what is it, every 50 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
And so Tim was our guide, so he kept finding those, and that
Cruise right
worked out
through
great.
that.
And so then we looped around and went back, went up onto Gates Hill. And I'll digress for 2 seconds here. The relative to short loops, which it's not a informal thing, and she didn't have a problem with it, but the field is mowed in a loop. So if somebody wanted to go for a half-hour walk, or nice or leisurely walk, they could walk the loop around the field. So the town is mowing both the lower path as well as the rerouted path where it's much higher and drier at the top of the hill. And that makes a nice little loop, for a 20-minute walk, and that's 25-minute walk, depending upon how fast somebody's going, so.
Could the same be done in a loop around the perimeter of the field at Malone?
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, no, I'm sure all we have to do is ask. I don't think
And
they would have a
another
problem.
thing I'm curious about, whether that field's ever gonna be mowed. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it really needs to be, but it's becoming a
Well,
non-field.
it should be mowed, I mean, just if nothing for else, there's not much of a quality hay coming out of that at this
Right.
point in time. So he's not gonna get payback out of it, but it certainly should get mowed, so it just doesn't continue to degrade,
Knock down the poplar.
yeah. All right, and there was nothing outstanding that came out of the Felicia gathering. We did go down to the other side of the property, on the Malone Road side, and once Felicia got down there, we were gonna go maybe walk in and walk out versus trying to make a loop out of that. But once she saw like what that was like and that it was basically inaccessible, she decided that taking a picture of the entry area was sufficient.
Yeah, that's some pretty good Greenbrier right there at the start, along that line.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate walking a boundary line. That's what she inspected.
So, any other new business?
For anyone that's not tired of trail work at this point, there's a couple other opportunities coming up. Mike and the Nemba guys are putting in trails out at
Hidden Meadow.
Hidden Meadow, formerly Fieldstone Farm.
Mm-hmm.
A week from Sunday, is that what it is?
The 5th, Sunday the 5th.
Sunday the 5th?
Mm-hmm.
What time?
I don't have the time yet. It's gonna be published, and the Open Space Committee.
I think there was.
Did Chris Monroe put the
sent
time
a-
in?
Yeah, I can't remember. He sent an email around, which I'll forward to you guys.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't remember if there was a time on it or not.
It
So that's-
wasn't in the heading, I know that, the email.
What's your project like, Mike, do you know?
Yeah, Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road. I know you all know me, but try to follow the protocol.
Yep.
So the East Quabbin Land Trust received a grant in the spring to put in new trails out at Hidden Meadow, the former Fieldstone Farm, as Mark mentioned. And we are going to provide some off-street parking. So we have a access drive and parking area. You know, it's gonna be a pervious stone gravel parking area and access drive. But it will provide some space for people to get their vehicles off the road. We've received 2 bids for that, and our executive director is reviewing those now, and award of that contract is imminent. Along with that, that's very close to where the new trail has been already laid out and approved by the state. And now with the help of the Area Mountain Biking Association, on the 5th, we will actually be taking the marked trail, the marked routing, and will be actually clearing the physical trail. And that will provide a loop to an existing cart road or ATV trail and come back to the parking area. So we tried to keep the new trails close to the road and not in sensitive areas, and kind of made the trail denser, where, you know, there's more already interruption to the wildlife, rather than in the back area where there's a nice wetland that there's been quite a bit of moose sign in over the last couple of years. And so that's for Hidden Meadow. At Henry's Grove across the street, we just delivered 3 bird boxes, 2 woodies and 1 owl box, that will go along the Ware River, the east branch of the Ware River down there. And that is to comply with the CR, that requires us to make some wildlife improvements, and that's the one that's due this year. So all we have to do is set the boxes at this point. Mark, you're looking a little inquisitive.
That has to do with the WPR on the property?
I don't know about the WPR, but the CR. So that land, and that happened before I came back to town. But there are some conservation restrictions, the way we're tied in with the state. I don't know quite the proper terminology.
Yeah, it's a WPR, it's the same as Mount Jeff, but generally that just says what you can't do. They don't generally have requirements
Oh,
for
well,
doing
that may not be the
improvements.
source. There is a
It may
requirement.
It may be something that Cynthia wants to do and it's allowable under the
Oh,
WPR.
no, this is actually a requirement imposed on us. We have to do it. So this year, it's the bird boxes. Next year, they're the wildlife. We have to create snags and wildlife habitat via the snags.
What-
Curious, I'll have to
what about the
ask
snags?
Cynthia about that.
The
Maybe that
tree
would be
snags.
underground.
What about-
We'll pile them up and make it so that,
A snag is a standing dead tree, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, but it's a standing dead tree, right? A snag?
yes.
Yeah.
You're not gonna pile up a snag. A snag
Right.
is
No,
standing.
well, once it goes on the ground, what's it
Okay.
called?
A fallen snag.
Well, yeah.
Rabbit.
Yeah, well, that's what we're required to do. I'll get the specifics and follow up next meeting.
Okay.
Do you,
So that you know.
do you know how the wood duck boxes are going to be put in?
When you say how they're put in, you mean out in the water?
Yeah.
No, they
Oh,
won't
okay.
be. They will be back, near the water shore interface, and they'll be mounted typically on dead trees, snags.
There you go.
Really?
I was gonna get that, yeah.
That doesn't make them raccoon feeding stations?
Well, that's a very good point. That is a very good point. There will be, they already have the predator guards have been added, and we just discussed Monday night that we could add some, like, sheet metal wrapping around them to discourage the climbing animals' ability to get there.
A wood duck box. I never heard of a wood duck box, but.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
an
They
owl
usually
box,
set
wood-
on a post in
water.
in the water, so the best time to do it is when it's frozen
Frozen,
solid, but
yeah.
I don't know
Oh, that's a good idea.
if that stream freezes
Freezes.
hard enough.
Oh, it
Well, they might be able to pick a spot where it did.
Well, yes,
Right,
that's
right.
true.
And I kind of picked an area where there's, when I call it an island, it's got some, the beavers are keeping some channels open around it. Forms basically an island, but we may not be able to use that site because it's not on land trust property. I believe it's on the state property, so. But the other two,
Along with the bench.
yeah, yes, and I brought that up to them,
Cynthia knows.
yeah.
But the wood duck can swim, so it's all right.
Yeah. But there's been some discussion on that and whether, how you install them, you know, do you go out on the ice and how do you get a good pole in? Because you see these things tipped over all over the place. And if they even should be out there. We've had some input that says, hey, these dead trees along the shore is really where the wood ducks, the woodies normally nest anyhow, so.
Good to know.
So what, how do
I'll bet you could rig something up and put use a ice auger
Mm-hmm.
to spin a helical pile down. It's
Yeah.
a really nice support for a
Mm-hmm.
bird box.
Cynthia.
I'm sure somebody's done it.
Cynthia Henshaw will be out with us, you know, worker bees, to tell us how and where to do it.
Yeah.
But we've already.
Helical pier sounds like a way to go versus trying to get something down, 3 feet into the mud.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight.
Oh, you can do it with a regular fence pounder in a canoe or kayak. Not easy, but you do it, you know.
Owl box, any specific, I mean, this is trying to just digressing off into an interest, but what kind of owl boxes? Or is it
Barred owl.
Barred?
Mm-hmm.
And are they different from other owl boxes? Is there?
I kinda.
I've never even seen an owl box, must be big.
I have.
Are they
Must be
functional?
huge.
I've seen them, pictures
I've seen
of
them.
I've seen pictures. Not
They
of
are
them,
big.
They what?
They are big.
Yeah. Can you fasten them just to the side of a tree? Or
That's
is that,
where I've seen them.
is that what normally happens with
Yeah, I
those?
think so.
So you get wood duck boxes and then what was
Two
the-
woodies in a barred owl box. And if you wanna see one,
What's the status of wood ducks in the area? On our
We
walk, I
always saw
pointed
one.
out on Gates Hill, Steph and I, when we first got here, we were just walking Gates Hill and found a perfectly intact, dead, male wood duck. And I should have taken it and had it to a taxidermist or something, because it's a gorgeous bird. And but no sign of any physical damage, no animal had touched it, and it was just strange.
What a weird place for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
He probably,
at the,
he
we
must
call
have
it dead duck
must
crossing
have zigged
now.
when he should have zagged.
there's the two woody boxes with the predator guard feature, and there's the owl box. They're, you know, I just took them so that people would know where they were.
Yep.
So you can't really see them very well in the I mean, you can see them, but it's hard to identify them.
Yep.
Maybe,
So you can
maybe
pass
it
that
just ran
around.
out of gas, trying to get
Question.
from that wetland on New Templeton Road,
Oh, yeah.
north of Cross, down to Nettie.
Wait, do they not
Nettie Brook.
normally fly pretty far? It's not that, I mean, from where to fly.
He didn't know.
All right,
So anyway, the other project that's going on
Yeah,
I guess they can fly.
is
Back together here,
Yeah.
folks.
is the whole Rice Reese Trails.
Yeah,
Um,
I haven't heard more from Dave. Dave was the one that was starting that up, but maybe because of his daughter, that's,
Yeah, he's kind of been in and out of it, and now I understand why.
yeah.
Um, The main, a main work day for lots of people doing small pruning, you know, your
Yep.
trail pruning kind of stuff, is Sunday the 18th. Brett Russ and a couple guys went out the other day. All the heavy chainsaw work is done.
Oh, wow.
Those trails are clear now.
Oh,
I was probably going to lead a small crew out the week of the 13th before the bigger work day on the 18th to do brush cutter work.
You going on which
Cut-
day? 17th?
I haven't said that yet,
Oh,
but
okay.
sometime the week of the 13th. I'll send something out to see if
Okay.
anybody's interested. I'm just talking about getting like
Oh, yeah, no, I
maybe
think.
three of us, three, four max. But brush cutter is the tool for
Yep.
that white pine thicket,
Yep.
and get a new, more sensible swath in there than what Cindy had
Oh,
cut
Oh,
originally.
Cindy did that?
Yeah,
What'd she use? Like,
I know, hand printers, I think. So anyway, anyway, it's already coming together. Just getting the heavy wood out of there
yeah.
is an improvement, and the brush cutter will attack the man-eating vine section.
and you need the,
You see it?
do you need the beaver blade, or would the triangular blades cut through that pine? It depends on the
No,
size of the pine.
No, I'm going to be using my, the one with the chainsaw teeth.
It's on yours. Do you have like a beaver blade with a chainsaw around the rim? Have you seen that?
Haven't heard it called that. I don't know, but
I have one called the beaver blade, and it's got a chainsaw is the cutting thing, so it makes it pretty simple to sharpen it when it gets dull and whatnot, because you sharpen it just like a chainsaw.
Yeah, the blade I have,
Oh.
it's got individual teeth that you sharpen, same ground file, same deal.
Yeah.
It's a chainsaw.
On the Beaver Blade, it literally is a chain,
Okay, no, that's different than what I use.
yeah. That's good,
So I'll,
so there's some activity.
I'll put more information out in an email.
Yeah, send that out, cause I hadn't heard anything about what's going on since I talked to Dave about it, so, yeah, we can probably get a pretty
But
good.
those, I mean, by the end of, well, by the 18th, those trails are gonna be in really fine shape.
Wow.
Good, excellent. And there's a plan to address that loop from the east side?
Yeah, we're talking the whole thing here.
Okay, good.
What will happen with the part on the hill?
Up at the top of the hill where it's all white,
Yeah,
white
like-
pine thicket.
No, the
No,
clear,
no, it's
the
clear,
clear
it's a
down-
field.
Well, the
Oh.
clear, you know what I mean?
Oh,
the clear-
down at the
Up
Reese.
behind the house, so you got
down
the
at Reese-
foundation, then
Reese
at the
Farm.
top of the
Yeah.
hill.
Yeah.
No,
But nothing there.
Nothing's going on up there.
You just
at the
cross
moment.
through it?
Yeah, you
You
just,
just
yeah,
pass
you just
straight
head
past
straight
through.
across the field to complete
Okay,
the
so there
loop.
won't be anything
Oh,
going
no,
up
the-
to the top?
That's at the bottom of the hill stuff. So when we
Yeah.
entered that field, we took a left-hand turn, went way up to the top of the field. To access the loop that Mark's talking about, you just keep going essentially straight across,
Yeah.
down into the woods.
Yeah, I was just curious if they were gonna do something to go up.
Nothing.
No, other than probably
nothing at the
just
moment.
mow it with a, somebody's doing something to maintain it, cause it's not all overgrown at all. So somebody must be just at least brush hogging it once in a while.
No, the approved trails from DCR as part of the watershed plan are the loop trails.
Yep.
There's nothing identified up through the fields.
Yep. Right. That's great that something happened with that. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So,
All in favor? Aye. Yeah,